Part 1, The Whispering Flyer. In the quaint embrace of Maplewood Drive, nestled amidst the picket-fenced realities of suburban tranquility, there existed an anomaly, a relic of the past that clung to the present like a ghost to its haunting grounds. It was on an unusually breezy summer afternoon that Becca, the eldest of the siblings with her raven hair tied back in a practical ponytail, discovered the first piece of the puzzle that would unravel their ordinary lives into a tapestry of terror and wonder. Tanner, the middle child and an ever-curious soul, was the first to notice his sister's stillness in the backyard, her attention fixated on something clasped between her fingers. It was a flyer, aged and worn as if it had been touched by the hands of time itself, the paper yellowed and the edges torn, whispering of secrets and stories long forgotten. It beckoned them with its mystery, an invitation not just to an event but to an adventure, one that would test the bounds of their courage. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, Becca read aloud, her voice a mix of intrigue and disbelief. The name sparked a faint memory, a place spoken of in hushed tones and the subject of playground legends, an arcade of laughter and screams, of pizza in peril, of animatronics that danced in the light and whispered in the dark. Grand reopening, the flyer proclaimed in bold, faded letters, the date coinciding with Becca's upcoming 13th birthday. Lucy, the youngest with her wide, imaginative eyes, clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter to her chest, sensing the change in the air, a prelude to the unknown. "Can we go, Becca? Please?" she pleaded, her voice tinged with both excitement and fear, for even at the tender age of 9, she understood that some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. The idea, reckless and thrilling, took root in their minds. They could celebrate Becca's birthday at the pizzeria, a tale they would share for years, a secret bond only they would understand. Tanner, with his heart that knew no bounds of bravery, was the first to voice what they all felt: "Let's do it! Let's go to Freddy's!" And so, as the shadows lengthened and the day gave way to the encroaching embrace of dusk, the trio made their pact. They would visit the fabled Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a place out of time, a place that the world had moved on from, but that had not, it seemed, moved on from the world. With the flyer as their guide, the siblings ventured towards destiny's grasp, unaware that this birthday celebration would be unlike any other, for the past clings fiercely to its specters, and Freddy Fazbear's was rife with spirits not yet willing to be forgotten. As they crossed the threshold of their home, armed with nothing but the innocence of youth and the unspoken thrill of the forbidden, the flyer seemed to whisper promises of joy and terror, a siren song that led them towards an evening that would become etched in the annals of their lives as the night when everything changed. Part 2, The Fading Echoes of Festivity. As twilight's embrace enveloped the world in hues of dusky lavender and somber gray, the three siblings approached the once vibrant establishment that now stood as a monolith to bygone revelry. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, once a beacon of joy and childhood fantasies, loomed before them, its facade an echo of laughter and screams now silenced. The building, with its peeling paint and overgrown parking lot, whispered of abandonment and decay, yet something within stirred on this eve of Becca's 13th year. The neon sign, stuttering with reluctant life, sputtered the name Freddy's in a spectral dance of light and shadow, as if the very electricity begrudged its task of illuminating the derelict pizzeria. It flickered, a hesitant pulse that beckoned the children closer with each reluctant flash. The wind itself seemed to carry the distant sound of an animatronic band playing a discordant melody, a song that should have been lost to the ages. They pushed open the door, its hinges groaning in protest, as if warning them of the threshold they crossed from their world into one forgotten. The scent of old grease and lingering perfumes of celebrations past hung in the air, a fragrance that was both inviting and repelling, a duality that defined the very essence of their destination. Inside, Becca, Tanner, and Lucy's eyes adjusted to the dim interior, where specks of dust danced in the sparse light like tiny spirits of merriment that refused to die. Their footsteps echoed through the hall, a hollow sound that seemed too loud in the vast silence of the abandoned arcade. The siblings' breaths became visible in the chill that had inexplicably settled over the space, a cold that seeped into their bones and made their skin prickle with unease. The animatronic creatures, once the heart and soul of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, stood on their stage like sentinels of a forgotten kingdom, their once bright fur now dulled and their painted smiles cracked and faded. Their eyes, glassy and vacant, stared out into the void of the restaurant, as if waiting for an audience that would never again arrive. Yet, as the children watched, a shiver ran down their spines. There was something unsettling about those eyes, a depth that suggested a lurking consciousness. Tanner's hand found Becca's in the dimness, seeking comfort in the familiarity of his sister's touch. Lucy, ever the dreamer, clutched her stuffed rabbit to her chest as if it could ward off the creeping dread that slithered around them like an unseen serpent. The silence of the place was oppressive, a tangible entity that pressed against their eardrums with the weight of untold stories. It was Lucy who first heard the whisper of movement, the subtle shift of air that suggested they were not alone in their explorations. The sound was almost imperceptible, a quiet scuttling that could have been attributed to the settling of an old building or the scurrying of rodents that had claimed the space as their own. But the children, with the clarity of youth, understood that the noise was neither of these things, it was something else, something that watched and waited with bated breath. Becca's leadership, forged from the responsibility of being the eldest, now took hold as she mustered a courage she wasn't sure she felt. "Let's explore," she whispered, her voice steady despite the tremor she felt within. "It's just an old building," she reasoned, though her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. And so they delved deeper into the pizzeria, past the rows of arcade machines that hummed and buzzed with an eerie semblance of life, past the cobwebbed prize counter where plush toys and plastic trinkets gazed out with sightless eyes. They moved as a unit, a trio bound by blood and the unspoken fear of what lay in the shadows, their steps a silent pact to face whatever secrets Freddy's held together, as a family. But as the night crept upon them and the world outside faded from view, the siblings would come to realize that some secrets are better left shrouded in the past, and some doors, once opened, might never be closed again. They were no longer just children in an old pizzeria, they were wanderers on the precipice of an abyss, teetering on the edge of a reality that was about to shift into the realm of the unimaginable. Part 3, The Mysterious Arcade. The heart of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had always been its arcade, a realm where fantasy and reality blended in the glow of neon and the jubilation of digital fanfare. Now, this heart beat irregularly, its pulse an eerie mimicry of life as the siblings ventured into the dimly lit arcade hall. Rows upon rows of machines stood sentinel, their screens flickering with images of games paused in time, waiting for players long gone. Tanner, with a spirit that hungered for discovery, felt a magnetic pull towards the machines. His gaze flitted from one colorful cabinet to the next, each adorned with vibrant characters and worlds locked behind glass and pixel. The air was thick with the electricity of anticipation, the promise of adventure that these games had offered to countless children before. A token, its metal surface dulled by years of neglect, lay forgotten on the patterned carpet. With a glance at his sisters, who gave a nod of approval, Tanner picked up the coin, feeling its weight and history in his palm. He approached a machine that seemed less forsaken than the others, its screen alive with the invitation to play. Pirates Cove Adventure, read the marquee, the image of a cheerful, eye-patch-wearing fox pirate beckoning him closer. With a mix of reverence and defiance, Tanner inserted the token into the slot, the machine accepting it with a mechanical clunk that seemed to echo through the silence. The game sprang to life with a jingle that pierced the stillness, the sound a dissonant chorus that seemed both welcoming and warning. Tanner's fingers danced over the controls, guiding the animated fox through treasure hunts and stormy seas, a digital odyssey that mirrored their own journey into the unknown. Becca and Lucy watched, their eyes wide as they were drawn into the narrative unfolding on the screen, their hearts beating to the rhythm of the synthesized soundtrack. As Tanner played, the temperature around them dropped, breaths materializing in puffs of white. The children huddled together for warmth, unaware of the shadows that began to stretch and twist around the edges of the room. The arcade games, long dormant, flickered with renewed vigor, as if an unseen energy coursed through their circuits. A chill ran down Becca's spine as she felt a presence behind her, something unseen, its gaze heavy upon her back. A quick glance over her shoulder revealed nothing but the rows of arcade machines, their screens now aglow as if a spectral hand had awakened them from slumber. The air seemed to thicken, charged with the static that made the hair on their arms stand on end. Lucy clung to her rabbit, whispering into its fabric ears her fears and hopes. The toy, a constant companion in both play and solace, seemed to gather her words, its stitched eyes glinting with an otherworldly comfort. Tanner, absorbed in his game, was oblivious to the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the way the lights seemed to dim with each level he conquered, the way the shadows grew longer, their edges sharper. The siblings were enveloped in a bubble of luminescence cast by the arcade machines, islands of light in a sea of encroaching darkness. The games around them came to life, their electronic beeps and boops a cacophony that filled the room, a symphony of artificial life that both entranced and unnerved. It was Becca who first noticed the change. The animatronics, once silent and still, began to emit a low hum, a mechanical symphony that harmonized with the arcade's electronic orchestra. Their eyes, once dull and lifeless, now shone with a haunting luminescence. The figures shifted ever so slightly, almost imperceptibly, in a pantomime of motion that defied their mechanical nature. The game suddenly reached its climax, the final challenge presented to Tanner with a triumphant fanfare. But the sound was too loud, too jarring, and it reverberated through the hall with an intensity that felt like a clarion call to something lurking just out of sight. And then, as Tanner's character claimed victory on the screen, a power surge swept through the pizzeria. The lights flickered violently, casting the room into a strobe-lit nightmare. The children's screams mingled with the electronic din as the shadows converged upon them, the boundary between game and reality blurring into obscurity. In the chaos, the line between the virtual and the tangible was erased, and the siblings found themselves not just players in an arcade, but participants in a much darker game, one with rules unspoken and a board unseen. They stood together, hand in hand, their breaths shallow, their minds racing, as they prepared to face the next level of a game that played for the highest stakes, their very souls. Part 4, The Serenade of Shadows. The abrupt cessation of light thrust the arcade into an abyss, and in that instant, the siblings became acutely aware of their own vulnerability. A silence fell over the room, a stark contrast to the cacophony that had just filled their ears. It was in this silence that the clock struck midnight, its chime resonating through the walls of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza like a herald of unknown fates. The darkness around them felt alive, pulsating with unseen energies. Becca, Tanner, and Lucy stood still, their hearts pounding in unison, a drumbeat that matched the tempo of their rising fears. The very air seemed to vibrate with the remnants of the game's electronic cries, now replaced by a more organic sound, a melody that was both beautiful and haunting. It was a tune they all recognized, one that had been ingrained in the memories of their childhood, the jingle of Freddy Fazbear's theme, yet now twisted into a minor key, warped and chilling. The source of the melody was the main stage, where the animatronics had been poised as silent guardians of the long-forgotten revelry. Drawn as if by an invisible thread, the siblings moved toward the stage, each step hesitant yet inevitable. The animatronic band, their once cheerful visages now a grotesque masquerade, began to perform under the ghostly illumination of emergency lights that bathed the stage in an otherworldly glow. Freddy, the bear, with his top hat askew, Chica, the chicken, her bib stained with the echoes of past meals, Bonnie, the rabbit, his guitar hanging by a thread, each animatronic twisted into life, their movements jerky and unnatural, as though they were marionettes controlled by a malevolent puppeteer. Lucy's hand tightened around her rabbit, the plush toy an anchor in the sea of fear that threatened to drown her. The stuffed rabbit's eyes, once comforting, now reflected the eerie light, giving it an uncanny appearance of sentience. Tanner, usually indomitable in his bravery, felt a shiver of dread cascade down his spine, his adventurous spirit quelled by the foreboding serenade. Becca, trying to be the rock for her younger siblings, mustered her courage, her voice a whisper that barely carried over the melody. "They're just machines," she told herself as much as her siblings. But the lie was thin, and they all felt the truth in their bones. These were not the friendly characters from the posters and TV commercials. There was something else here, something that watched, something that knew. The animatronics' eyes seemed to follow them, glowing with an intelligence that should not have been. It was then, in a moment of terrifying clarity, that Lucy uttered the words that sealed the moment in their minds forever: "They're watching us." Her voice, laden with an ancient fear, made the situation all too real. The melody reached its crescendo, and as it did, the shadows in the room coalesced into shapes and forms that were both there and not there, specters of children that once filled the pizzeria with laughter and screams of delight. The siblings could see them out of the corners of their eyes, playing games, eating pizza, celebrating birthdays, a phantom party that transcended time. Then, without warning, the power surged back to life, the lights blinding after the darkness. The machines around them rebooted, their screens illuminating the room once more. But the shadows did not recede with the light, they remained, etched into the periphery of their vision, a reminder of the pizzeria's haunted legacy. With the return of the light, the animatronics ceased their macabre dance, becoming once again the motionless statues of a bygone era. The shadows, however, did not dissipate, they seemed to draw back, retreating into the corners of the room, into the spaces between spaces, biding their time. Becca, Tanner, and Lucy, their breaths still ragged with fear, now faced a choice. They could flee from the haunted arcade, from the memories and shadows that clung to it, or they could press forward, seeking answers and possibly a way to lay their restless spirits to rest. But the night was not yet over, and the game, it seemed, had only just begun. Part 5, The Unseen Predators. After the surreal dance of the animatronics, the siblings found themselves caught in a fleeting moment of stillness, as though the entire pizzeria held its breath. However, this respite was short-lived. The sudden revival of the animatronics had been merely the overture to a far more sinister performance. The lights, which had flickered back to life moments ago, now betrayed them, dimming once again, but not into complete darkness this time. Instead, they offered just enough illumination for the children to witness the impossible. The animatronic figures were stepping off the stage, one mechanical foot at a time, with a precision that belied their bulky frames. Becca's heart felt like a trapped bird within her chest, its wings beating against the confines of her ribs. Tanner's hands were clenched into fists at his sides, the memory of the arcade token's metal still imprinted on his skin. And little Lucy, who had always found her bravery in fairy tales and make-believe, felt the icy fingers of reality wrap around her, suffocating the comfort that imagination once provided. The siblings found themselves in a grotesque parody of a game of cat and mouse, with the animatronics playing the predators, their motions a jarring symphony of whirs and clicks. The creatures' eyes, like spotlights, cut through the darkness, scanning for their prey. A sense of urgency propelled the children into motion, their young legs carrying them away from the stage and into the labyrinth and heart of the pizzeria. They ducked and weaved through tables set for parties that would never happen, overturned chairs that would never be righted, and past the carcasses of arcade machines that buzzed with deranged life. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, the tang of it filling their mouths and noses as they ran. The building seemed to contort around them, the walls warping, the floor undulating beneath their feet, a funhouse distorted by fear and darkness. Tanner, looking back over his shoulder, saw the bulky silhouette of Freddy Fazbear rounding a corner, his top hat askew, as if he were a gentleman in pursuit of a wayward thought. Chica, with her beak parted in a silent scream, her bib reading "Let's eat," seemed a cruel joke as she shuffled with relentless intent. And Bonnie, his red guitar now a shield of nightmare, scraped against the walls, leaving behind a screech that was the anthem of their terror. They stumbled into the kitchen, a graveyard of appliances and culinary tools that had once been the site of feasting and celebration. The siblings crouched behind a stainless steel counter that was smeared with the grime of ages, the once shiny surface now dulled and scratched. The clanging of the animatronics grew closer, a metallic march that echoed in the hollow space. Becca, thinking quickly, whispered a plan to her siblings. They would wait for their pursuers to enter, and then slip out, double back to the main dining area, and find a place to hide until daylight. It was a plan born of desperation, but it was all they had. The animatronics entered the kitchen like the figures of a twisted nursery rhyme, their movements grotesque in their mockery of life. The siblings held their breath, praying to be as silent as the grave that the pizzeria had become. Lucy's stuffed rabbit seemed to press into her chest, a talisman against the encroaching danger. As the animatronics' searching light swept over their hiding place, the children squeezed their eyes shut, willing themselves to become part of the shadows. And for a moment that stretched into eternity, they were nothing but statues in a tableau of fear. Then, as if by unspoken agreement, the animatronics turned and marched away, their lights receding into the distance, their footsteps a fading echo of dread. The siblings waited, counting heartbeats like a metronome marking the passage of danger, before they dared to emerge from their makeshift sanctuary. They slipped out of the kitchen, their feet silent upon the grimy floor, their breaths shallow in their chests. The dining area, with its party hats and streamers, now seemed a mausoleum to joy, each decoration a headstone for memories that would never be made. Becca, Tanner, and Lucy moved through the darkness, their eyes wide, searching for a place to hide, to wait out the night. But in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the night was long, and the game was far from over. Part 6, The Sanctuary of Shadows. The siblings' harrowing escape from the mechanical predators left them with an adrenaline-fueled clarity. As they navigated the dining area, the once cheerful venue now seemed to mock them with its silence. The stillness was punctuated by the distant, ceaseless whirring of the animatronics, a reminder that their reprieve was temporary, that the hunters would soon be on the prowl again. Becca, her mind racing with strategies and contingencies, led her younger siblings through the maze of tables. They moved like specters, their footfalls muffled by the thick layer of dust that carpeted the floor, the detritus of celebrations long since past. Tanner's eyes, adjusted to the dimness, caught a glimpse of something, a glint of metal behind the prize counter. With a mixture of trepidation and hope, he motioned towards it, whispering, "There!" His voice was a thread of sound in the vast tapestry of silence that enveloped them. Creeping towards the counter, the children discovered an old service door, its paint chipped and its frame rusted, a forgotten passage used by employees of a different era. Becca tested the handle, half expecting it to be locked, but to their collective relief, it gave way with a groan of protest. They slipped through the portal, finding themselves in a room that was a stark contrast to the rest of the pizzeria. It was a small space, cluttered with boxes of party supplies and faded decorations. Stacks of paper plates patterned with Freddy's face lay alongside napkin bundles and dusty balloons. It was a storeroom, a repository of joy that the world outside had left behind. Here, the animatronics' glowing eyes could not reach, the walls a bulwark against the night's madness. The children huddled together amidst the relics of festivities. Lucy nestled into the crook of Becca's arm, seeking the comfort of her sister's presence. Tanner, ever watchful, positioned himself by the door, listening for any sign of the encroaching threat. His mind, which had always been a fortress of logic and reason, now wrestled with the reality of their situation: sentient machines in a haunted pizzeria, a scenario that defied all logic. Becca, with the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders, tried to project a confidence she did not feel. She wrapped her arms around Lucy, whispering assurances that she hoped were not lies. "We'll be okay," she murmured. "We'll wait it out until morning." Lucy's rabbit, the silent witness to their plight, seemed almost to watch over them, its glassy eyes reflecting the sliver of light that crept under the door. The stuffed animal, an emblem of innocence, now felt like a guardian in the dark, its presence a counter to the malevolent forces that sought them. The night stretched on, each minute a brushstroke on the canvas of darkness. The sounds of the animatronics moving in the distance were a symphony of the surreal, a reminder that the game of hide and seek was not yet over. The children could feel the presence of their hunters, a palpable intent that seeped through the walls, searching for a way in. Becca held her breath, listening to the silence that was not silence, hearing the whispers of movement, the mechanical breathing of their pursuers. They were close, perhaps just beyond the door, their sensors scanning for life, for the warmth of human flesh to quell the coldness of their existence. The room became a sanctuary, a bastion against the night, but it was also a cage. The children knew they could not stay forever, that eventually, they would have to face the dawn and whatever it brought with it. But for now, they were safe, and in the world of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, safety was a currency more valuable than gold. As the hours passed, the fear that had clamped around their hearts began to loosen its grip. Exhaustion crept in, pulling at their eyelids, whispering the sweet promise of rest. But sleep, that gentle reprieve, was a luxury they could not afford. They had to remain vigilant, to be ready to move at the first sign of danger. And so, they waited, 3 children bound by blood and circumstance, in a room that time had forgotten. Outside, the animatronics continued their search, their programming a relentless directive that knew no fatigue. The night was long, the shadows deep, and the game was far from over. Part 7, The Dawn's Requiem. The relentless passage of time within the confines of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was as much an adversary as the stalking animatronics. The seconds stretched into minutes, and the minutes into hours, with each tick of the clock a drumbeat in the symphony of suspense that surrounded the siblings. As the night waned, the once palpable darkness began to relent, giving way to the subtle encroachment of dawn's early light. Within the storeroom sanctuary, the children's vigil had become a battle against the weight of their own eyelids and the lure of slumber's escape from their nightmarish reality. Becca, her protective embrace around Lucy unyielding, watched as her little sister finally succumbed to exhaustion, her breaths deepening into the rhythm of sleep. Tanner, his back against the door as if to barricade it with his will alone, felt his own consciousness ebbing and flowing like the tide. As the first light of dawn began to seep under the door, slicing through the darkness with the promise of salvation, the children were roused from their enforced wakefulness by the change in the air. The oppressive atmosphere of fear seemed to lift slightly, as if the light itself was anathema to the horrors that haunted the pizzeria. It was Tanner who whispered, daring to voice the hope that dawned within them, "I think it's morning." Becca, her senses still sharpened by the adrenaline that had sustained them through the night, listened intently. The pervasive sounds of the animatronics, their mechanical march and eerie music, had ceased. The silence that followed was not the ominous quiet they had grown accustomed to, but one that spoke of an end to their ordeal. Lucy stirred, her dreams of dancing robots and menacing shadows giving way to the comforting reality of her sister's arms. The stuffed rabbit, still clutched tightly in her grasp, seemed to have watched over her through the darkness, a sentinel in plush fur. With a cautious optimism, Becca signaled to Tanner, and together they approached the door. Tanner's hand reached for the handle, his fingers brushing against the cold metal, hesitating as he prepared to unveil the truth of their situation. With a collective breath held between them, he turned the knob and slowly opened the door. The storeroom flooded with the soft, diffused light of the morning, chasing away the remnants of the night. The siblings stepped out into the main dining area, their eyes squinting against the newfound brightness. The animatronics were once again inanimate, their monstrous nocturne concluded, returned to their places on the stage as if they had never moved. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, under the scrutiny of daylight, was a tomb of memories, a place where fantasy had once reigned and now only whispered its legacy through the dust and decay. The children moved through the restaurant, each step toward the exit a step back toward reality, away from the nightmare they had endured. As they emerged from the building, the morning sun embraced them, its rays a gentle affirmation of their survival. The pizzeria behind them stood silent, its secrets locked within. Becca, Tanner, and Lucy didn't speak of what had happened during the long night, some experiences were beyond words, shared through the silent language of mutual understanding. They walked home in the new day's light, the normalcy of the world around them a stark contrast to the darkness they had left behind. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza became smaller with each step, its hold on them diminishing until it was nothing more than a dark silhouette against the sunrise. But even as they left the shadow of the pizzeria behind, they knew that the memories of that night would linger, etched into their minds with the clarity of those who have looked into the abyss and found something staring back. The experience had changed them, had bound them together in ways that only those who have shared in terror and triumph could understand. They had survived the night at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but they were no longer the children who had entered. They were survivors, veterans of a hidden world that brushed against the ordinary, leaving its mark in the form of whispered stories and unspoken fears. It was a chapter of their lives that would never be forgotten, a chilling adventure that would forever haunt their dreams in the nights to come.